Every traitor pays. My head was pounding like someone had forgotten to turn off a jackhammer inside my skull. The world drifted in front of my eyes. The ceiling looked crooked as if someone had deliberately turned it upside down. I tried to get up, but immediately collapsed back onto the bed like a hangover. Only this wasn't an ordinary hangover. This was something else. Heavy, sticky, as if I weren't just drunk, but poisoned by something much worse. I closed my eyes and tried to remember. The last thing I saw was dinner with Cordelia, my wife. Emma, our daughter, was already asleep. We were sitting together at the long table by the panoramic window. Red wine, candles, her bright lipstick on the glass. She was smiling, strangely, like she knew something I didn't. And then nothing. Darkness. Where was she? With effort, I reached for the phone on the nightstand. My hands trembled. A screen nearly slipped through my fingers. 5 missed calls, all from work, or rather from the number tied to my company. I hit redial. The voice on the other end was anxious, disjointed. It's David. What happened? Jesus, sir. Where have you been? The accounts? All company accounts have been wiped. The money's gone. Your personal accounts too. Everything. What do you mean? Everything? I sat up, forgetting my splitting headache. Check the reserve fund. The Swiss. Already did. It's all gone. System logs show internal activity from your IP. Access was made from your laptop. At night. That's not possible. It's all logged. And, sir, Eric has disappeared, along with your wife. I said nothing. Just ended the call. My heart was pounding like it was about to burst. I stood up, swaying, and made my way to the kitchen. No one. Silence. As if the house were abandoned. I opened Emma's door. Her bed was empty. The blanket neatly folded. I dialed Cordelia. It rang for a long time. Almost disconnected into voicemail when she finally picked up. Oh, you're awake. Her voice was calm. Even slightly cheerful. Where are you, Cordelia? Where's Emma? Don't shout. You need to conserve your strength. You've hit rock bottom, David. Eric and I planned this for a long time. A year ago, you brought him into the company yourself. Wanted him to boost profits. He really did boost them. Just not for you. He was with me long before. You hired him. Everything was calculated. You took my daughter? No, our daughter. And believe me, she's better off without you. Deep down, you know what you've become. Trusting. Primitive. Cordelia. I swear. If you don't tell me where she is, threats? Don't bother. It's all done. The paperwork signed. All the evidence. It's against you. And now goodbye. Don't try to find us. If you do, you won't even know how quickly you'll end up. Buried. The call ended. I stood there like a statue, phone in hand. I didn't believe it. Just didn't. But seconds later, the door crashed open. Police. Hands in the air. I didn't resist. They cuffed me before I could even react. Everything happened in minutes. At the station, they sat me down in a dark room. A folder was thrown onto the table in front of me. David Hunt began, the investigator, a burly man with cold eyes. You're being charged with tax evasion, financing illegal organizations, and large-scale fraud. That's nonsense. It's all fabricated. And what's this then? He opened the folder. Photos. Signatures. Transfers. All with my signature. But I never signed them. I swore to that. These are forgeries. This is your wife filed for divorce. And provided these documents, including data from your laptop. The evidence against you is bulletproof. I said nothing. What was there to say? She also handed over information on offshore accounts. And transfers of company assets. All in your name? I laughed, probably for the first time that morning. So she robbed me, framed me, and now she's divorcing me? It's not our job to discuss personal relationships. He snapped the folder shut. We'll be held in custody until trial. A lawyer will be appointed. Later, they pulled me from the chair and led me to a cell. As I walked down the corridor, I saw 2 young officers behind the glass looking at me with pity. They must have read the news. A cell door creaked open and they shoved me inside. A bare gray room. Cot. Table. Metal toilet. I sat on the edge of the bed. My fingers trembled. Inside. Emptiness. Not even rage. Not yet. Just realization. Slowly growing. Like frost creeping over skin. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The cold of the cell became familiar. The cement wall opposite me no longer. Irritated. I had memorized every chip, every imperfection. The room smelled of sweat, dust, and something sickly sweet seeping from the drains. Sleep came poorly. Sometimes from thoughts. Sometimes from the screams of other inmates. Sometimes from the gnawing feeling that I wasn't here by mistake, but by an unspoken sentence. Weeks passed. Officially awaiting trial. In reality, a freeze. I didn't know who my lawyer was. He was never allowed in. The records claimed. He'd refused to visit. I wasn't given any letters. No information from the outside. Felt like a blockade. They wanted me to give up, to break. But they didn't understand who they were dealing with. One morning, when the guard brought breakfast, watery porridge with a hint of rust, and 2 stale crackers, he spoke curtly without meeting my eyes. "You've got a visitor." "You'll see." I followed him silently. But something about the tension in his shoulders told me this wasn't a lawyer or a well-wisher. I could feel it. Something dark bubbling up inside. Me again. Like oil heating on a pan. A long-forgotten feeling. The visitation room was empty. Just a metal table, 2 bolted stools, and a glass partition with tiny holes. I sat. I waited. Didn't brief. Heard only distant doors slamming. And then he walked in. Wearing an expensive coat. Hair neatly styled. Fin-rimmed glasses. He looked like a man whose life was in perfect order. The smile was stretched puppet-like. He didn't sit right away. He circled the table slowly, studying me like an animal in a cage. "Well, hello, David." I said nothing. Just stared. He sat. Arms folded. Like a smug professor ready to lecture someone on how to lose your life in one. Surprised? He leaned forward slightly. I asked for this visit. Not for formality. Wanted to look into the eyes of the man Cordelia and I so gracefully discarded. I remained silent. He wanted me to snap. I didn't. Not yet. "You know David." He drew out the words with relish. "I hated you from day one. The way you looked at me. Remember that? With that paternal, condescending smirk. Like I was some pup. But you're just a tired old man. Everything you built. A rotting empire of habits and outdated ideas. Your downfall was inevitable. Your place. A landfill. Of history." He smirked. Pulled a silk handkerchief from his coat and dusted off an invisible speck on his lapel. "Cordelia. Let's be honest. In bed. She's fire. Much hotter than you'd expect. From such a frosty bitch. She's good. And you know the best part? She doesn't pretend to be drawn to your worn-out authority anymore. She's finally honest with herself. Just like me. I didn't move a muscle. We laugh a lot when we talk about you. There you are. In a cage. While we're lying on your mattress in your house. Watching movies. Sipping wine. She even says she hasn't felt this free in years. So thanks for that. But now we're selling the place. Don't need it. We've got a nice, warm spot far from here. A place you'll never find. And really, why should you?" I remained silent. But inside, steel wires were already humming. "Oh, one more thing." He said it with the same cold calm as if ordering coffee. "Your daughter." Now I looked at him differently. "She's 14, right? Almost grown. Interesting. You get where I'm going with this." My fist clenched. The table cracked beneath my fingers. Even though it was just plywood. "If she turns out like her mother," he continued, leaning closer to the glass, "she'll have something you haven't controlled for a long. Maybe I'll show her what adult life is really like. She needs a new role model after all. And you." He tapped the glass. "You'll rot in here. And you'll do nothing. So enjoy it. I'm going to kill you," I said slowly, clearly, carving each word into the stone of reality. "Sorry, what was that?" "I will kill you. Her too. You're both already dead. You just don't know it yet." He sighed. Shook his head. There it is. Still the hero, huh? Even in a concrete box. He stood. Smoothed his coat. All right. I've wasted enough time on you. I've got dinner with Cordelia. Emma's such a sweetheart. I'm going to go snuggle the little thing. She still doesn't know how much you miss her. He walked to the door. I watched him go. Never blinking. He didn't look back. I stayed seated until the guard returned and took me back to my cell. There in the damn corner, I allowed myself a smile just for a moment because now everything was clear. I wasn't planning to stay here long. I sat on the cot leaning forward, fists clenched, eyes hollow as if some apathetic demon had crawled inside me. My mind was working furiously like an old diesel in winter, slow, ragged, but relentless. After Eric's visit, the conclusion was clear. Waiting was no longer an option. He had crossed a line, and now I had none left. To stay was to let them do everything they had planned. To surrender was to hand over my daughter. No, not a chance. I stood and approached the stone wall, pressed my forehead against the cold concrete and began to breathe faster. My heart accelerated. My hands trembled on purpose. I dropped to the floor, contorted like a fish out of water, and began to convulse. At first softly, then harder, I groaned, louder, then howled, almost like an animal. Soon I collapsed onto my side and started to shake as if in the throes of a seizure. Thick spit gathered on my tongue in advance, foamed from my mouth. It looked real, like I was breaking. Hey, I heard a guard shout from outside. What's wrong with you, Hunt? I didn't respond. Just rasped. Shook harder like my body had slipped away from my control. Shit, Johnson, open the damn cell. He's dying. God damn it. One of the guards approached. I heard the lock click open. A screech of the door was sweet music. Fast steps, sharp rushed. The guard rushed to me. Knelt down, slapped my cheek. Hunt, you hear me? Hang on, you son of a bitch. I opened my eyes at the precise moment his face leaned in too close. With my left hand, I grabbed his collar. My right slipped under his neck, and in one motion I locked my elbow under his chin. He gurgled, struggled, scratched at the air. I pressed him down onto the floor, one knee on his chest, tightening the hold. Shoo, I whispered. Sleep, I won't kill you. You haven't earned that. He went limp. I checked his pulse, still there. Unconscious. I took his key ring, radio, handcuffs, pulled his cap down low over my brow, and slipped into the corridor. Outside, silence. Surveillance cameras were on, but I knew the blind spots. I passed through the shadows, the keys gently jingling on my belt. In the third section, I opened the first door I found, a medical block, and a utility room. Inside, I found a steel crowbar. I took it in my hands. There was something satisfying about feeling cold metal again. Heavy, honest, a tool that didn't need justification. At the fourth door, I paused to peek into the reception area. Just then, someone shouted, "Hey, stop. That's not Johnson." Intruder, the cry was echoed by others. The alarm didn't go off. I'd already pulled the fuse from the panel earlier. It bought me seconds. Guards spilled into the corridor, at least 8. 1 with a baton, 2 with tasers, the rest with bare fists, but I saw it in their eyes. All of them ready to smash. Skulls. Down on the ground, Hunt. One barked, the leader. Don't make this worse. I dropped the crowbar, raised my hands, took a step forward. I'm not here to fight, I said calmly. They hesitated. I glanced at the nearest one. I just want to say one thing. What? The closest. Guard frowned. He picked the wrong side. Then I lunged. I slammed my shoulder into the first guy's chest. He flew backward, crashed into the wall. His helmet thunked against the concrete, and he slumped, unconscious. The second swung his baton. I ducked under, chopped at his wrist with the edge of my hand, sent the weapon flying, then smashed his jaw. With my fist. He spun, stumbled, dropped. The third was more cautious, tried to flank me. I kicked a stool into his path. He tripped, and I drove my knee into his ribs mid-fall. A crunch. He squealed but stayed alive, just gasping for air. The others charged together. A swarm. I slipped between two, grabbed one by the belt, spun him around, used him as a shield. His comrade's punch hit him square in the face. The first crumpled. I hammered my fist into the second's liver. He screamed and collapsed, groaning. Someone hit me with a baton on the shoulder, a flash of pain. I grabbed the baton with both hands, yanked hard. The guard came flying toward me, and I drove my knee into his face. A watermelon splitting open. The seventh was a brute. A mountain of a man. He didn't rush. He saw I was tired. All done, hero. Almost, I said and charged. He tried to trap me in it. Bear hug, but I ducked low, hooked his leg, dropped him. As he fell, I drove my knee into his temple. He dropped like a barrel of bricks. Only one remained. Didn't even lift his baton. Get lost. I told him. He nodded and ran. I stood in the middle of the corridor. Bodies lay all around, all alive, all humiliated, not a single blow to the back. Not a single death, because death is quick. And they needed to remember. I wiped the blood from my lips, took a deep breath and walked on through the doors that led into darkness. Ahead of me waited freedom and vengeance. By the time I reached my house, night had already begun to yield to dawn. The streets were deserted. Only the streetlights at the intersections flickered faintly as if trying not to attract unnecessary attention. The house stood just as before. Same facade. Same door. Same windows. Except now it wasn't mine. A sign hung on the gate. For sale. I stopped. Just stared at that betrayal. Nailed to the iron. Like a verdict. Inside. Something rose like a storm. Not pain. A cold predatory fury. My bones felt heavy like lead. My breath slowed. Like a python coiling before the strike. Selling the house where you raised your daughter. Classy Cordelia. I smiled to myself. I just hoped the realtor had the sense not to touch my old tools. The lock on the basement was still there. Primitive. I removed it in seconds. The way I once taught myself. Thin wire. The basement smelled of damp in the past. There was no spotlight. Only the faint gleam of moonlight filtering through the vent slats. I walked to the far wall and flipped back the rug. The rug that concealed the true face of David Hunt. The floor panel clicked under my palm, revealing a steel hatch. I lifted the lid. Inside was a suitcase. Scuffed. Like my conscience. I opened it and saw what I had always kept for the worst-case scenario. The kind where the world collapses and there's no room left for naive illusions. Fake documents. Alexei Morrow. Photo. But with an altered jawline. Shaved head. And a mustache. Officially deceased in a refinery explosion somewhere in Eastern Europe. In reality, wiped out an entire drug cartel. Under orders from the Ministry of Defense and vanished without a trace. Alexei. Smirked. Pulling out the electric razor. Long time no see. You ugly bastard. The razor bust. Hair fell onto the concrete like pieces of the past. My face transformed into a stranger's. Then I glued on the mustache. Thin tidy. Like some fascist professor from a BBC documentary. Also in the case. Neatly rubber-banded stacks of hundreds. I counted. Enough to get anywhere in the world. Another item. An old encrypted satellite phone. I turned it on. Enter the passcode like a prayer. 8 digits encoded. Gransfeld style. The name of my first target. A soft click confirmed the signal. I dialed the only number I still knew by heart. He picked up almost instantly. The voice was deep. Velvety. Like duct tape on a throat. Hey Derek. Jesus. Of course. Only you would call me at 4 in the morning on a deadline. Like a ghost from the grave. Let me guess. You tried the normal life again. I gave it a shot. I replied. But you know what they say. A man with blood on his hands has a hard time holding a fork. So it's business. Derek. Cough. All right. Dust off your claws. Old man. What do you need? Trace 2 people for me. Cordelia Hunt and 1 Eric Shelby. Run them through everything. Flights, credit cards, immigration, phones, any trace. I need to know where they are. Got it. Give me a couple of hours. Go make yourself a cup of tea. I've got another brew. Burns in the chest. It's called hatred. Oh shit. That's serious. His tone sharpened. You're not planning on killing, are you? Of course not. I'm planning on ripping. He laughed. All right. I'll stay on the line. For the record, I'm against this. I hung up, sat down against the wall. 2 hours later, he called back. Found them. They're in Portugal. Small coastal town. Gated property. Transferred to some shell foundation. Everything looks clean. But there's a detail. What detail? There's an old man living nearby. Name Rui Santosh. Ex-contractor. Now just a farmer. But don't believe a word of that. He's a stockpile. An armory. A workshop used to supply us back in the Balkans. You'll want to pay him a visit. Coordinates. He sent the address. I nodded. Though he couldn't see me. Tell him Alexei is coming. He'll understand. I will. What? Don't drag this out. You already escaped that life once. Come back quickly. I promise. If I'm still breathing, getting to Portugal was easy. If you're a shadow, I caught a barge across the Baltic. Crossed Germany under fake documents as a trucker. Then slipped through the Spanish border on an old olive freighter. Slept in a crate used for butter. Ate cheese. Drank from a flask. I traded off gypsies for a pack of smokes. When I finally reached the coast, my fingers ached from tension. My back screamed. And one thought burned in my chest. So, Rui's house. Looked like anything. But an armory is hideout. Small cottage. Overgrown vineyard. The dog missing. An ear. When I reached the gate, it barked once. And stopped. It sensed it. Not fear but steel. The old man stepped onto the porch. Alexa, he asked without blinking. To open the... In a while since we had guests like you. Come in. He led me to a shed. Where under a thick layer of straw, a trap door led to a bunker. Inside, it smelled of oil, gunpowder, and old ghosts. What do you need? He asked, opening a weapons cabinet. Night vision binoculars. Fingerless gloves. A machete. Like in Somalia. Suppressor. A few toys for fireworks. And something. I glanced at him and grinned. Just in case I have to give someone a pedicure through the... He smiled for the first time. You haven't changed, Alexa. Still a hopeless romantic. You know what I always say. Flowers are for graves. Not dates. He tossed me a backpack. Good luck, my friend. Everything you need is in there. You heading to hell? I'm going home. I pulled up my hood, tightened the gloves, and stepped out into the night. The road to them was... But each second only thickened the venom in my veins. With every kilometer I passed, I felt my old calm harden into steel. I wasn't just traveling. I was hunting. Portuguese air. Salty, warm, tinged with Atlantic moisture, sliced through my lungs like a razor. Palm leaves rustled in sync with my thoughts, which held no mercy. I didn't think about morality. I didn't dwell on the past. It was already dead, burned away with trust and hope. All that remained was the objective. I left the old SUV parked on a hill about 500 meters from the estate. The location was perfect. Above the villa, a ridge blanketed in sparse shrubs and rock. Ledges offered a full view of the property. I lay on my stomach, pulled night vision binoculars from my bag and began the survey. The villa was solid. 3 stories, flat roof with a pool. And lounge area. 2 entry points. The main gate, automated, and a side access likely for staff. Grounds, manicured lawn, a few ornamental trees, a small garden to the side. But the key feature, security. There were many. The outer perimeter was patrolled by armed men. Clad in black tactical gear, comms, body armor, even thermal optics. Not guards, a private army, all for 2 traders living off my blood. I smirked. Well, boys, you've taken this seriously. I whispered, checking the tension on my throwing knives. So have I. I rose to one knee and pulled out a soft pouch filled with blades, compact throwing knives, custom forged from Carbon steel, non-reflective, honed as sharp as the thoughts in my head, fingerless glove on the left. A black band on the right, soaked in a tranquilizer poison. I didn't have enough steel for everyone. But I had enough speed. I moved down the slope, weaving between the bushes like a shadow. Not a sound escaped me, not even my breathing. I controlled everything. The first one appeared. On the flank, standing with his weight rested lazily on his rifle as if bored. His silhouette stood out sharply against the moonlight. I crept up behind him, a swift step, and the blade slid beneath the base of his skull. He let out a soft, almost gentle gurgle and crumpled into the grass. Like a sack of wheat. "Don't slack off, buddy. Your shift's just started," I whispered, wiping the blade on his sleeve. Next came to one was smoking. The other muttering in some muddled dialect, maybe Serbian, maybe Romanian. The smoker laughed, tossed his head back, and instantly caught a blade to the throat. His death rattle was brief, like a hiccup. The second turned, but didn't even have time to register what was happening. I drove the knife into his temple and gave it a quick twist. His eyes glazed over with a faint look of offense, as if I'd ruined his evening. "Sorry, brother. Wrong party," I muttered. I dragged the bodies behind the bushes with care, as if they were colleagues let go during downsizing. Not a trace of disrespect. Just business, brutal, filthy, but business nonetheless. The next section was the rear of the villa. Less lit, one guard crouched down, fiddling with a tablet. I approached from behind, pulled a weighted cord from my pocket, and slipped it around his neck. And his vertebrae snapped out of order with a satisfying crunch. He jerked like a fish on a hook, then went still. I scanned the area. Silence. Perfect. Up on the roof, I spotted a sniper. A problem. He had a commanding view of the entire property. I climbed the drainage pipe, pressing my legs against the wall for support, flattening myself against the concrete. The wind was on my side. The flag on the roof flapped hard, masking my movements. When I reached the parapet, I saw the sniper lazily scanning the grounds through his scope. I crawled forward, inch by inch. When I got close enough, I grabbed a fistful of his hair and drove my blade into the base of his skull in one sharp thrust. He arched, but I was already dragging him back. "Thanks for your vigilance, eagle-eyed. Maybe next time, sleep at night instead of napping on a perch," I murmured. I took his rifle, examined the optics. High quality, worthy of serving a new master. I slung it over my shoulder and descended. Time to deal with the center. Along the main walkway, 3 patrolled in formation. Steady, synchronized, textbook perfect. They were practically gift-wrapped targets. I tossed a stone into the bushes. One of them went to investigate. The dumb move, but convenient. I waited until he was close enough. A precise throw. Blade to the neck. He collapsed silently. The other 2 turned. One called out, "Lucas, everything okay?" I was already there. The first took a knife under the arm, straight to the heart. No delay. The second was tougher. He caught my wrist. We grappled, like caged fighters. He tried to strike with the butt of his rifle. I blocked with my elbow. Painful but manageable. "Shit. Alarm," he shouted. I slammed my forehead into his face. Twice. He staggered. I then plunged my knife beneath his ribs. Fast, twisting. Blood sprayed my cheek. He felt like a sack of stones. "No worries, pal. That scream was wasted. The alarm won't help if the whole place is already burning." I whispered in his ear. I could feel how this bloodbath didn't exhaust me. On the contrary, it filled me. I didn't kill for pleasure, but every breath they lost was a breath returned to justice. And they knew it. I saw it in their faces, in their eyes. Next came the garage wing. 5 guards. Relaxed, holding coffee cups and chatting. Overconfident. I used the ventilation shaft, crept along the awning roof, then dropped an incendiary mix down on them. One of them screamed as flames consumed his sleeve. As they scrambled, I leapt down. One received a blade to the gut. I left it in him. The second took it under the knee, then straight to the throat. The others barely had time to react. One got the rifle but to the face. Another a blade between the shoulder blades. The last one I kicked square in the chest. He flew back, crashing into a concrete wall, leaving a bloody smear. Coffee didn't agree with you. Tragic. Maybe it was too hot. I murmured, wiping the spray off my face. Blood trickled down my sleeves, soaking into my gloves. But I felt neither disgust nor fatigue. This was a job. And I was damn good at it. Next up, the courtyard before the main entrance. 4 guards, 2 with rifles, 1 in body armor, 1 on radio. I tossed an incendiary charge. Near the trash bin, a diversion. 3 ran to investigate. I crept up behind the one who stayed. His face froze in surprise as I grabbed him by the ears and drove my forehead into his nose. A crunch. He slumped and I swiftly slit his throat. Quiet now, don't wake the neighbors. When the 3 returned, I was already kneeling behind a car. The first got shot by his own team, dead with a det pack strapped to his back. I had pushed the corpse forward, and the moment one of them grabbed it, detonation. Blood, meat, and organs splattered like spoiled salami across the floor. The last one screamed, right as I drove a blade deep into his back. So far I felt ribs crack. He howled but couldn't speak. I shoved him away and said, "Show, your last thought won't be about love. It'll be about how you picked the wrong man to screw." He twitched on the ground and went still. Silence. Outside was still. Just crickets and wind. Blood flowed across the tiles like a bad horror movie. But this wasn't a movie. It was real. Reality. I straightened, inhaled deeply. My hands were covered in blood. My clothes torn and soaked. But I was alive. And they weren't. I approached the door. It was thick with a coated lock. At it and smirked. "Well, Cordelia, Eric, time for a chat." And I raised my foot to kick it in. The house was too quiet. Too quiet for a place where a battle had just taken place. I approached the building from the garden, where the rocks kept me out of direct sight. The moon reflected in the blood puddles along the path, as if nature itself was trying to etch everything I'd done into the earth. I was close. The couple of windows on the first floor were slightly ajar. Voices filtered through one of them. I pressed myself to the wall and crawled closer. The curtains swayed. And through the gap, I saw a familiar silhouette, Cordelia. Her hair tied back, her face tight with worry. She paced like a cornered cat, chewing her lip. Her voice was shaky, frayed. "Are you sure everything's under control? We haven't heard from the outer perimeter in over 30 minutes. Eric, as always, oozed arrogance. Even now, with death staring through his window, he lounged back in the chair, legs stretched, smirking at her like a professor explaining basic math to a failing student. "Cordelia, sweetheart, I hired an army for this place. Thanks, guys. Some saw combat before they could. If your poor ex is still alive, he's probably curled up under a fence somewhere, pissing himself in whispering prayers. Relax." Cordelia stopped and stared at him. "He's not like that, thick. You're underestimating him. I know him. He won't give up." Eric's side means he'll die slower. Then I heard a sniffle in the corner of the room, curled up like a pop. Sat Emma. Her face was swollen from crying. She was trembling, not from fear, but from rage. "Dad will come, and he'll kill you," she hissed. Eric turned as if he'd heard a mosquito buzz. He stood slowly, walked over to the girl, and without a word, delivered a sharp slap across her. The sound of it exploded in my head like a granite. "Shut your mouth, You're talking too much," he sneered. "Your daddy, if he shows up at all, will be nothing but a lawn ornament at the local cemetery. And you, soon you'll be on your way to a wellness camp. There'll be every ounce of that soft-hearted, dead-loving bullshit out of you." "Got it?" Emma stared up at him, fist clenched. And I saw it. In her eyes, there was me. Not the man they tried to break. The man who was coming. "Your filth," she said. Cordelia stood to the side. No outburst. No rebuke. Just silent nodding. I couldn't listen anymore. My heart roared like an old diesel engine idling in the cold. But before I could move, The sound of a door caught my attention. Someone stepped out of the house. I froze. A guard, one of the last, spotted me. His eyes narrowed. He immediately reached for his radio. "Freeze," he barked. "Freeze, goddammit." I slowly raised my hands, as if surrendering. He didn't approach. "Fear makes you smart. It's him." He shouted into the radio. "It's Hunt. He's at the house. Repeat, at the house. I need backup now." "Smart," I said. "Calling guests to your own funeral, kid. I hope you got to take a shit before your shift started." He pulled his rifle. But I was already in motion. I hurled a knife. The blade buried itself just below his collarbone. And he screamed, dropping the weapon. I lunged forward, grabbed him by the collar, and smashed my forehead into his face. Blood gushed like a faucet. That wasn't pain. I whispered in his ear as he slumped against the wall. That was a down payment. 3 more. Burst out of the house. Rifles in hand. Body armor gleaming. They opened fire. I dove behind it. Fountain. Bullets shredding the air like threshers through wheat. "David Hunt," one of them shouted. "Surrender. You're done." I peeked out, aimed, and fired the sniper rifle once. The bullet punched through the nearest man's face. "You're right," I said. "I'm done. But I'm taking you with me." The second one yelled. "He's trying to run and move to flank me." Pulled a smoke grenade and rolled it at my feet. Gray fog exploded through the garden. And I slipped through it like a ghost. One caught a rifle but to the face. His nose shattered. The other took a knife in the throat. Blood sprayed. He clutched at his neck. Gurgled. Collapsed. Then I heard the roar of an engine. From beneath the house awning, a black SUV peeled out. Emma was inside, screaming. "Dad, Daddy," I sprinted forward. But 2 more guards emerged, blocking my path. One held a shotgun, the other in AK-74. "You're not getting out, asshole." One of them screamed. I was a cluster charge at their feet. A shrapnel turned their legs to minced meat. They screamed but weren't dead yet. "Oh, what's all the yelling about? I haven't even started carving." I muttered as I walked up and finished them both with shots to the chest. The SUV was already clearing the gates. I ran but too late. They were escaping. Eric had Emma by the shoulder. She fought like a wild cat. But it wasn't enough. I stood in the middle of the lane, drenched in blood. Bodies lay scattered. The air reeked of gunpowder, sweat, steel, and death. "Running, are we?" I exhaled. "Fine. Let them. This isn't the finale. This is foreplay. They won't get away." I raised my eyes toward the road. "Go ahead. Change your country, your names. It won't matter. I'm already behind you." The engine groaned as if disgusted by everything that had happened, but it obeyed. I climbed into the Jeep of one of the dead guards, stepping over his still warm, crackling corpse. The keys were in the ignition. That made life easier, which meant death would be harder for them. Pedal to the floor. The tires screeched like the car wanted revenge too. I tore through the main gates without looking. Back at the blood-slicked facade in the rearview mirror. Ahead them. The SUV with my daughter, with that bastard holding a gun to her head, and the woman I once swore to love. "Emma, hold on. Daddy's coming." A few kilometers into the chase. Lights flared up. 3 more support vehicles. Of course, always wanted my own motorcade. I muttered, swerving left to dodge incoming fire. From the lead vehicle. They were shooting with enthusiasm, but no aim. One of them shouted. "That's him. It's Hunt." "No shit. Genius. It's Santa Claus." I growled, gritting my teeth as I twisted the wheel. The Jeep jolted and slammed broadside into the first pursuing SUV, hitting. Its wheel arch metal screamed. The vehicle flipped, caught fire, and one of the passengers flew out the window, shrieking so loud he probably scared bats a mile away. The second SUV closed in. I saw them readying their weapons in the side mirror. I slammed the brakes, drifted hard right. They flew past, unable to turn in time. I caught up from behind, drew my pistol, leaned out, and fired through the rear window. One, then the other, heads snapped like puppets on strings. The SUV veered off course, slammed into a concrete barrier. Flash. Silence. Two left. The ones up front. They veered off the main road. Construction ahead. Pavement torn up. No way through. Of course, industrial zone, where else would rats run, but into the slums. I chuckled, turning after them. The tires clattered across broken asphalt, sparks flying from the undercarriage. On both sides, abandoned warehouses, rusting skeletons of a forgotten factory. Their car stopped. Doors flew open. They ran, dragging Emma. I leapt from my jeep and gave chase. My pulse thundered in my ears. My breath, steady, surgical. This was my zone. My war. My hunt. One guard turned, weapon raised. Bad call. I threw a knife straight through his eye socket. He dropped like rotten potatoes. Another crouched behind a rusted generator. I flanked him, and as he peeked out, I drove a blade under his jaw, straight into his brain. He never knew he was dead. One left, limping. I caught up, grabbed his collar and slammed his face into a concrete wall. Once, twice, a third time, his skull cracked like a rotten gourd. He slid down, leaving a crimson smear. Then I heard a voice. Don't come any closer. I swear I'll shoot her. I stepped out of the shadows. Eric held Emma, gun to her temple. His hand trembled. Cordelia stood beside him, pale, terror in her eyes. Well, hello, family, I said, raising my hands. Ready to talk reconciliation. How about you all go to hell and I go home? Dropped the weapon. Eric screamed. I dropped the pistol. It clattered onto the concrete. Then the backpack followed. Cordelia lunged for the weapon, snatched the pistol, and leveled it at me. And of course, both of them burst into laughter. That's it, Hunt. Game over. Eric shouted. Emma, say goodbye to Daddy. I winked at my daughter. The smallest gesture, but she got it. Daddy, I'm sorry, she said. And then, fast, vicious, she sank her teeth into Eric's arm. He screamed. Let go of her. And in that instant, she stomped on his toes with everything she had. He buckled. Emma darted aside. I whipped two knives from my sleeves like a magician and hurled one straight at Eric. The blade buried itself in his shoulder. He dropped, his pistol flying from his hand. Cordelia shrieked. Aimed, but I had already thrown the second knife. The blade struck her wrist, pinning her hand to the wooden post beside her. She screamed. The gun clattered to the floor. Cool off, sweetheart. Not your runway moment. I said. I picked up my backpack, pulled out the machete, and strode over to Eric. He was crawling, reaching desperately for the pistol, wriggling like a worm. I brought the machete down and nailed his hand to the floorboards. He screamed. Just wait. God damn it. I can fix this. Oh really? And how exactly do you plan to do that? Dr. Mengel of marketing. It's in the laptop. Everything's in the laptop. He choked out. All the data, the accounts, the access codes. It's all there. He fumbled a trembling hand into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook. The passwords, it's all inside. He pointed toward the it's there. Just please. I took the notebook and glanced through it. Thanks. Very generous of. And now I leaned in close. Let's remember something. You slept with my wife. And you hit my daughter. Then I ripped the machete free. And I began to hack first the shoulder, then the chest, then the knees. Eric screamed until his throat filled with blood. Flesh flew like splinters. And I kept swinging blow after blow until what remained was an unrecognizable mess of meat. The floor ran slick with blood. Silence. Except for one final gurgle. I walked over to the bag, retrieved the laptop. Then I turned to Cordelia. She was still pinned to the beam, her eyes wide with horror. David, please forgive me. I stepped closer and yanked the knife from her wrist. Get out. Disappear and never let me see your face again. She trembled, clutching her bleeding arm, and stumbled off like a drunk. I turned away, then heard a click. She had grabbed the pistol. A shot rang out. I ducked. A second shot. The bullet whisked past my ear. I threw my last knife right into her forehead. Her eyes went wide. The blade sunk deep between her brows. She stood for a moment longer, then crumpled like a dropped doll. Well, now you're really in deep shit, I muttered. I pulled an explosive charge from my backpack, armed the detonator and lobbed it toward the pile of bodies. Family therapy complete. Explosion scheduled on time. I turned toward the exit. Emma, let's go. We're leaving. She stood at the door, silent. In her eyes was terror and relief. We walked away and behind us, the old structure collapsed like a house of cards, bearing every shred of evil. Beneath tons of ash and concrete. When the dust settled and the smoke cleared, Emma and I stood by the roadside, staring at the ruins where betrayal once festered. Now there was only silence. The kind you could slice with a knife and serve for breakfast with eggs. Emma held my hand tightly without a word. In her eyes I saw everything at once. Fear, exhaustion, pain, but above all trust. So, Princess, I said, how was your evening family quest? Guess who's the psychopath? She sniffled and managed to smile through her tears. My bet's on the guy with a machete in his backpack. And I'm going with the one who bit a man with a gun like a rabid ferret. We're a perfect team. We walked the road until we reached my emergency hideout. A beat-up van stashed in the forest under a tarp. An old diesel that reeked of gas and old leather, like a grandfather after a steam bath. But it started because it was mine. Where to now? First to some old friends. And then maybe we'll find a spot on the map where no one knows how to pronounce the word betrayal. She nodded. We drove into the night behind us, blood ahead. Plans. 3 days later, I was in Geneva, not because I love the Alps, but because I had a guy. His name was Oscar, as Swiss as cheese and banks. He looked like a tax consultant until he... And you realized he could wipe out more than your bank account. He could erase your entire biography. I entered his office without knocking. He looked up and something flickered in his eyes, all mixed with a hint of fear. Jesus. They said you were dead. Well, I was close. Even picked out tile for my suite and how. But it was too bleak. You busy? Only if you plan to blow up the building. Not this time. Just want you to blow up a couple of servers. I tossed him Eric's laptop in the notebook. He flipped through them, blinked, then flipped again. This is a full blueprint for offshore fraud, laundering shell companies, forged documents. And all of it pinned to me. And all of it can be challenged. Do you still have the original documents? Of course, I even kept the toothbrush Cordelia used to clean her conscience. Though it's broken. You're still the same. Oscar sighed. All right, this will take a few days, maybe more. In the meantime, I'm feeding my daughter. She's earned more than a burger. At least golden. Pasta with truffles. Exactly 6 days passed. On the 7th, a call. It's done. You're no longer a criminal. That for me or Interpol. But all charges dropped. Court ruled the evidence was falsified. You were the target of a conspiracy. Plot twist of the year. And the money. You're richer than ever. We tracked the transactions, recovered the assets, returned them to your accounts. Even ones you seem to have forgotten about. Oh, hello there, Caribbean islands. And one more thing. Your company, the board of directors, is in shock. After your resurrection, they held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to reinstate you as CEO. The joy of coming back from the dead. Straight into a corner office, like Jesus, but with a machete. But there's one catch. I'm listening. One of the shareholders, the one who backed Eric, is demanding a meeting. Let him come. I'll serve him tea from a mug engraved with "I survived." Unfortunately, a month later, my company was boiling again like a volcano. I slashed nearly half of upper management, implemented new systems, and in numbers, it looked like the company had been yanked from a swamp and flung straight into the stratosphere. Dad, Emma said one evening, why did you even bother rebuilding all of this? I looked at her, her hair tied back into a ponytail again, just like before. Her eyes now free of fear. Because if you don't close your own wounds, someone will pour acid into them. 3 months later, we were in Tokyo. This is sushi. Emma frowned, staring at something that looked like a snail's eye wrapped in rice. It's a delicacy. Over here, they eat things that would trigger our gag reflex back home. Get used to it. The world is different everywhere. Can I just have a burger? You can. With wine. I'm underage. Then I'll drink for both of us. A month after that, Marrakesh, sand, spices, sun, and camels that looked at me like they were the tax authorities. And I was long overdue. Dad, Emma said, I didn't think you could just be normal like this. It's all a mask. Underneath a psychopath with an accountant's diploma. Did you really plan to live like before? With Cordelia, I planned to die like a fool. Instead, I'm living like a lunatic. I prefer it this way. In the 7th month of our journey, we found ourselves in New Zealand. I was sitting on a cliff, staring at the ocean while Emma was photographing penguins. The wind hit my face and I suddenly realized for the first time in years, I didn't need to be on guard. Dad, her voice came from behind. Emma, thank you for everything. For the killings, the blood, the prison break. For not breaking. I smiled. Believe me, I did break. I just put myself back together, like Lego, only with fewer instructions and more knives. We sat in silence. What now, she asked. To the moon. If you'd like. I hear there's no betrayal up there. And no sushi. Well, we'll manage. I'll bring the rice. You bring the snail eye. We both laughed. And in that moment, I knew it was done. I'd walk through hell. I'd pulled my daughter from the hands of monsters. I'd reclaim my name, my money, my life. And now, finally, I could just breathe. Just live. Thank you for taking the time to read this story. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, like and share in the comments. Remember, history is a witness to the past, a light of truth, a living memory, a teacher of life, a messenger of antiquity, and see you soon.